agenda, which is items 4 through 9, meeting minutes, financial reports, investment reports, tax collectors report, routine resolution for penalties for delinquent tax payments, and kind of the routine approval of expenses for attending relevant water meetings, business meetings. Any questions, comments on any of the consent agenda items?
Go over the tax collector.
Okay.
Preliminary totals.
Okay.
On page 6. Okay, all it is, it's just an update. The appraisal district has switched over to their new software. And we're not balancing, it's not been helping. The preliminary totals for y'all, you're up 15%. I don't trust that number at all. There's nothing going on out there. There's also a new Senate Bill 2 gone into effect. It's going to give you an exemption on commercial property if you've owned it for a year, or if you have leased property. It's 20%. It's called the circuit breaker. It's not going to affect the districts as much as it's going to affect Metro. That your totals here at 15%, based on their new system, that's what the estimate as of April the 10th. They're going to be sending us new totals probably every couple of weeks to update that to get it closer to what.
And just to be clear, this is not money collected, it's just
These are your new
property
totals.
values.
Yes.
MUD 7 is 1,283,957 according to
Right.
the appraisal district.
And there's really nothing going on in your district, and there's not a lot of sale prices to see it go up 15%. So just letting you know, these numbers are not good. And by law, they have to give us estimated totals.
And when should we expect final?
Not till July, you're certified. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other clarification, questions, comments? Anybody like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move approval.
I'll second that. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Takes us to item 10, receive the regular monthly SGRA report, Woodlands Division. Mr. Chris Meeks,
Good afternoon.
welcome.
I don't have anything to add on the report on pages 19 to 40. It's a pretty normal month, no violations, nothing out of the ordinary, but if you have any questions on anything on the report or anything you have going on with the authority, I'll let answer. Just an FYI, I'll be looking, to reformat the reports to be in a portrait instead of a landscape. So that way it'll fit on your page better. May take a little bit of time, but we'll get there. So everywhere else uses landscape, y'all use portrait, but go to more y'all's meetings, so they can do it.
All right, any questions for our SJRA friends? Move to item number 11, discuss Friesen Nichols technical memorandum dated Feb 16 with a list of people involved. Okay, so this is page 41. Page 62.
And this report was meant to be an an executive summary, if you will, of a recap of the last 2 years of the wastewater strategic plan. So you can read about 2 or 3 binders full of paperwork and rehashing it. We just trying to create a document that brought everything together in one concise document, including prior reports. That's what this was.
So this is what was issued on February 16th.
Sir.
Okay, so there's no changes to this.
You have some specific questions?
No,
Brad, that you'd like to?
no, I will pass. I had the way things are going. I'm not gonna ask anything this morning or today.
Okay. Move to item 12, discuss potential funding alternatives related to the SGRA Woodlands Division proposed infrastructure projects.
This was the item that we discussed last month. Kept it on the agenda. In case there was any additional comments or questions from folks, having had a month to kind of soak through it. No action to be taken. Just put it back on the agenda.
Yeah, it almost seems like that topic is still a little early to know how to deal with that until we get more clarification on the next moves and timing of those next moves.
It's fair.
And I'm talking about the next moves regarding AC water pipe and the wastewater treatment plant number 2. Okay, then I assume it'll be on next month's agenda too, and maybe until we deal with this.
Probably so. Probably so. If we, next month there'll be 2 board members across. And so potentially, so there may be a re-education of things. I would guess that may occur.
Probably will be.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, so maybe next month we go through it in more detail. Okay. Item 13, consider and act on a supplemental agreement with SGRA for engineering of wastewater.
Should be one.
Wondering about that.
And,
So there's fewer syllables in treatment plant. Why do we have to say reclamation facility? I mean, really?
So, yeah, I had this conversation the other day. So we try to follow whatever TCEQ is doing. And so it started before, and I'm probably got more history than me, with sewer treatment plants and went to wastewater treatment plants, wastewater treatment facilities. Their new buzzword is water reclamation facility. So the importance of wastewater, that's another, water source, not just waste. So we just follow suit with what they're saying.
That's been called worse too. We'll leave that one out. I think that
All right.
those are uneducated.
Well played, Mr. Nelson. Well played. Okay. So let's talk about the supplemental agreement for SGRA engineering of that plant, number 1.
This is the proposed supplemental agreement that was provided by the River Authority in January, I think it was. And it provides for the initial design and engineering of the proposed new, whatever we want to call it, plant number 1. And so.
I like that.
Yeah. And so no action's been taken up until now. There's been a lot of additional discussions about the plant. That's one of the things we were talking about in this last item about, what would be the alternatives to be able to fund whole kit and caboodle plant, AC water lines, other stuff, 600 million, whatever the number ultimately would be. So all those discussions have kind of played out over the last few months. And so Eric felt it was appropriate now to go ahead, River Authority asked for this item to be on here to consider the supplemental agreement for this phase 1 to start that process. We are pretty well, informed about the plans and the discussions and what have you. But we have been noting to other boards and this one as well, in order to be in a position to take action on the supplemental agreement, you need to be comfortable moving forward with the path of a new plant as opposed to repairs of the existing plant and pushing off consideration of a new plant, because you're spending money for design of a new facility, and if you don't believe there should be one, then you're not ready to consider that supplemental. So
it's premature to vote on number 13.
well, only if you are not to the point of making that decision. The first 3 districts we've had so far have all actually approved the supplemental. So it's on a board by board decision. I mean, each district has to approve the supplemental. So
How long, if they start the engineering work, how long will that take? And then how long will that engineering work be good?
well, first thing's the bond issue to get the funds to be able to do the work. So that's what this is for. It's for $40 million bond issue by the River Authority that would provide the funds, but then we do RFQs, et cetera.
So if we spend 40 million bucks, how long will it take to get the finished engineering product? And then how, if there's a delay for a few months or years or whatever, how long will that engineering design work be considered good?
So design work, 2.5 to 3 years. Afterwards, it really hinges on TCQ's regulations. Right now, they're looking at the 217, which is what governs a lot of this, revisions there. No real changes there, and they sit on the shelf for at least a year. They should still be all right. After that, we will need to send it back to the TCQ and verify. So you've got 2.5, 3 years for design and about a year sitting on the shelf where you just want to verify that everything's still good. Because the TCQ does have to approve this as well as the permit. We have to check the water quality standards. So it's a lot more than just a regular send to the county, let them approve it and it come back. There's a lot of other moving parts in this.
So
And what Seven's share would be just about just under 3 million.
So-
You have to do the engineering before the land acquisition expires though, right? Like you would have to do some kind of project before if you're gonna condemn all that.
Right. So we're starting some of that now with cash that we have on hand as far as the environmental assessments and a lot of that stuff with the land acquisition. So.
Another point that's been noted at some of the other meetings is this is a 30-year bond issue that includes 2 years of capitalized interest. And the purpose of that, from the River Authority's perspective, is to give a longer runway to the MUDs to be able to determine from item number 12 how they want to fund this and future tranches through rollback tax election, like we talked about, through a flat fee or through wholesale. So this is not a cost that would get rolled into your next budget cycle for your retail rates. This could not show up in your wholesale rates 2 years.
And the reason for that is we try to keep the project on schedule while you're doing public education, while you're working on the funding, because we have 3 to 6 months looking for RFQs for the design engineer, getting the bond on. And so once the agreement's signed, there's give or take 6 months after that before we even start that 2.5, 3 years of design and construction. So trying to run parallel paths at the same time, keep everything going.
So this is a basic, yes, real clear. I'm assuming I'm right, that this is approved between us and SJRA. And then SJRA, if it approves, will proceed with the selection of a design engineering firm through the regular process.
Through the RFQ request for qualification process.
We're not deciding about who's gonna do it. We're just talking about saying, go ahead.
And I'll add as well, some MUDs have questioned, they basically said, yes, there's a new plan, but we don't know entirely based on the MBR technology was decided about 2 years ago. They've said, we don't know if we want a new plan, but we don't know what technology to go with. Part of this could also be to reevaluate the cost of those two to make sure the cost we saw 2 years ago for MBR versus conventional, we're still in line. But that's, of course, additional time and money, but so much faster, that's a possibility.
I think 2 years is pretty much an accepted number for a design project, 2 to 3, 2.
So noted that this was talked about in January, but the 2 items of feedback. One is you're bringing us something for action with no paper, just a verbal discussion. Anytime we have action, we're asked to vote on something. It'd be nice to see a paper copy of what we're actually voting on. Granted that we had it, but I don't carry around my notes from January with me. Okay. The other thing is I think it's inappropriate that we take a vote to spend a significant amount of funds the last meeting before new board directors are set. I think that's a very bad precedent to set. So that's my feedback on this item. I mean, I think we got some guidance from you last month that voting to spend a significant amount of funds the meeting before the election is questionable based.
Decision, policy decision by the board. It's not a legal issue, so I'm not, don't want to speak to that. I think as to the large, fully funding, that's something.
But this is $40 million.
Correct. I think we're talking about the possibility of a rollback election and how that would give folks the opportunity to have a say in whether the costs, if it's costs that have to be incurred, does it go in a tax bill or does it go in their water sewer rates? The only other thing I think to note is the supplemental, should have had it in the packet. I think it's been on the Google Drive for a while, but I understand that it's not something that's printed, but that it wasn't intended to be oh, there's no paperwork. I think it was just, it's been on there, didn't think it's necessary. I said, sorry.
So if the MUDs all agree to spend this amount or to authorize this amount, the 40 million for the design work, and then the Woodlands Water Agency trustees vote to postpone it for some period of time, would the $40 million bond and expense get tabled for a period of time?
No, this decision is a MUD decision. So the trustees have been delegated the authority by the MUDs on budget matters. So yearly expense items or items that are going to have funds put together over a number of years of operating budgets. But this is an actual amendment to your MUD's agreement with the River Authority that will allow for the River Authority to issue bonds for rehab and rehabilitation. The original contracts between the MUDs and the River Authority did not have a mechanism in there because they were thinking about new infrastructure and then just maintaining on a pay-as-you-go basis for infrastructure. Now we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of Woodlands, a lot of stuff. It's not, we talked about not really practical to do pay-as-you-go on these large items. It makes more sense to have that spread out over the useful life of these new rehabilitated assets. So that mechanism is not provided for in your existing contract with the River Authority. So this is an amendment that's actually between each MUD and the River Authority. So it wouldn't be a trustee overruled decision, Cal, to answer your question.
It's the mechanism, I understand, that was utilized in 2017.
Correct. That's the first time it was used to handle debt financing of a major rehab and rehabilitation. I can't remember what the component was back then in 2017.
Big,
Yeah.
pretty large projects, Bear Branch, sewer line, and the duration cases.
The 40 million is all dedicated to the plant number 1.
Correct.
Do all MUDs have to approve this? How's that going? Is it a majority or what?
Well, each district has to vote on a supplemental agreement with the River Authority to have them debt finance. So if they don't, it would be the River Authority decision to work out how to address that with with the, the mud that did not, if all the others were like, there'd be a cash call or what the resolution would be. I couldn't say.
And the other MUDs have approved this.
There's only been 3 meetings so far. Yeah.
Well, that's, yeah, 3. They all 3.
Was this talked about at the trustees meeting?
No, but I wanted to bring up something that was, so is Cole Caraway the gentleman that was kind of going through with you last week, Ed, with kind of the,
That was David.
David Mundman.
Who wrote the technical memo.
okay. So his name's not on the,
Indeed.
am I looking at the wrong one? Okay,
I don't think there's minutes yet on the trustee. There's just a
Hmm.
summary so far.
okay. Anyway, basically they came to the trustee board last week with a lot of good information, but not a lot of numbers, about the cost for this or that or various alternatives. And the trustee board actually voted to authorize an expenditure of an extra 50,000 for some additional engineering and consulting work to come back with better numbers next month. And
Yeah. And so the purpose of that was to provide more information for those folks who were not ready to cross that decision point between new plant or rehabilitating old.
right. And so I guess the question is, why wouldn't we get that report, have that vote if there's going to be one, or set the vote before we vote for the 40 million engineering expense?
Well, that's why I said at the beginning, first thing you need to do is decide, do you believe the path forward is a new plant or possibly doing repairs to the existing? If you're not past that point and you need more data to get past that point, then yes, you would need to wait. for-
And those 3 MUDs that have met and voted for it have gotten past that
Correct.
and want a
They
new
don't need
plan.
that additional information.
So they don't need to meet them.
But if you're someone who does need that additional information before you're comfortable moving forward with a new plant, then you shouldn't vote on the supplemental yet.
Well, my thought is, even if you are comfortable with it and you get to the trustee meeting next month or the month after, and the vote by the trustees is not to go forward right away with a new plant, what's the point of voting on the 40 million now?
There wouldn't be a vote by the trustees on that issue, because that's not going to be a trustee funded issue. So the trustees had to vote because it was a, financial item through the budget process for the expenditure, but they wouldn't actually take a vote to either go forward or not go forward with the plan. They don't have that authority.
Okay.
Question. Yeah. There's not the decision to go forward with a new plant. There is still the need to go in and spend
Millions of dollars.
30 to 40 million dollars on rehabilitation of the existing plant just to extend its life.
So we would repurpose the 40 million from engineering work to rehab work on the existing plant?
Can you
But
do
we
that?
still have to do engineering.
But engineering would be completely different.
Correct. We would have to have a replacement supplemental agreement, because right now there's a list of what's to be funded with that 40 million. And if the purpose was changed, then we would need to change the supplemental. So I guess some cost would be whatever it is to request. Yeah,
But you have to have another vote.
correct, correct.
Whether you have another vote or you just delay this vote until you got clarity.
That's for each board to decide. Are you past that point of being comfortable with the data you have to move forward with a new plant? Or are you still, need more information to be comfortable with moving forward as opposed to replacing or rehabbing existing infrastructure?
Now you're comfortable voting before the election.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, why don't we kind of get a feel for what everybody's thinking? You have an opinion on this one?
Well, I feel comfortable moving forward, but I can also abstain, I think, from the vote,
It's your choice.
if that would make you guys feel comfortable.
Unless it's a tie.
Yeah. Since it's a tie.
Mr. Nelson?
Well, I don't want to go into I'm always talking about the city of Houston and my experience there, but I think what always I come back to is the fact that I'll cut to the chase. I want to build a new plant. I've seen the results of trying to maintain a plant beyond its years, how expensive it can be. Worst case, you start to have a little oops now and then, maybe bleed a little sewage into the stream. Upset plants and things like that that you didn't really foresee because you weren't able to replace everything, but well, we almost got it all, but we end up with the problem. And there's nothing really, I think, that a utility can do that's worse than have TCE come down and sue you because you're doing it. EPA joins in because you're doing it. At some point, if the plant's overloaded, you get a certain percentage. Is it still 75%? Then you have to do something quickly. If you didn't do it and you're not ready for that, then they can also ask you to restrict any growth within your district or your. So people who have talked about they know better about how big it should be, how small it should be, what the future holds, all that's conjecture on both sides. But at the worst case, it can result in, like I said, lawsuits and the stopping of all development until you get it fixed. 2.5 years to design and then a couple of years to build. So I'm just would like to err on it. We're going to spend a lot of money anyway. The plant's 51 or 2 years old. I just think that I know I'm ready to vote for a new plant.
Okay, that's clear. Mr. Sarich? Our representative on the stakeholder committee?
I sat through a year and a half or whatever it was of strategic planning and, I lived this plant for many years in my life. I know what's there. It needs to be replaced. I'm not wavering from that decision that I made strategic plan. And,
And there was a lot of input from you.
there was tremendous input.
About
It was, the meetings were 2 to 3 hours long. All the MUD directors that were representing the MUDs were independent and could do whatever they wanted. And we came to the conclusion that we need to replace the plant. I don't know how long you want to study this? How many more dollars you want to throw at it studying it? That's just ridiculous.
Well, would you mind telling us what your biggest concerns are with trying to keep the existing plant going? And I'm asking your professional opinion, having run or been responsible for those facilities. What are the biggest fears of trying to keep that thing going?
There's I guess the biggest unknown is all the underground stuff. There's no really good way to price that replacement or see if it's good or bad, but it's 50 years old. In my experience and other facilities, water wells, water plants, lift stations, that's the end of their life. I'm sorry. That has to be replaced. That's the guts of the plant. So I'm just convinced it needs to be replaced. Do I want rates to go up? Hell no.
Mr. Howe?
I think we ought to wait. I think it's premature to vote a couple days before the election.
How's a new director that knows nothing about all this gonna come in and get up to speed in a reasonable period of time?
I think they haven't just as good a chance of coming up to speed as we did.
No, we didn't have 2 years. New ones won't have a clue.
Oh,
So there's not a,
I'm not going to get into an argument with you about
it's not an
new
argument, it's
directors
just
or
a
old directors.
statement that you don't
You
get.
asked my question. My question is, I'm
And you
opposed to
said-
voting yes. Accept my answer and let's move on, please.
So there's no learning curve.
I didn't say that.
I'm gonna put you down as a not yet, or, maybe, whatever.
I mean, the trustees just approved spending $155,000 to get more data. Okay, if we're not going to respect that, pardon?
50,000.
Well, the minutes said 155.
I think it was.
Was that a different
It
thing?
was considered on the agenda as 155, but then David said they could do a brief, short.
Abbreviated 30.
No more than 50. So the motion ended up being, which of course isn't in we don't have the full trustee minutes yet. It's just a short summary. The action that was taken was to authorize spending no more than 50,000. Well, Brad, you wouldn't see that in summary. It's not fleshed out yet.
Well, summary doesn't properly reflect the decision that was made in the meeting.
I think typically much more abbreviated version of the minutes, because there's not much time.
Page 74.
Yeah, so the proposal, as it was originally begun in the discussion, was 155,000 to do a full-blown cost estimate of all of those other things that were presented that might need to be done, or that would need to be done if you went the Band-Aid route. So on that, remember on that PowerPoint presentation where there was 2 columns and it said, if you delay this long, you might have to do all these. So the 155 was to, I think, flesh out the cost for all of those things. What David Munn from Freeze Nichols reported was they've started to look at that, and he believed that for about $50,000, he could get to what he called a tipping point, where he believed that the break even of really knowing that we shouldn't waste more time going forward, going down that path to redevelop the cost of the path that was not chosen, through the stakeholder group. So that was the agreement to go through, with the idea that the step 2, if there was a decision that it did look like it was going to make sense to go ahead and fully develop out all the cost estimates for that other path, that it would be the full 155.
So it would be better if the summary said 50,000 for 30-day study.
It should, the minutes should.
Yeah.
That should be in the minutes, but yeah, but it wasn't 155.
We'll clarify that, but what I just described is what it is.
Still a lot less than 40 million.
Right, yeah.
So, okay, I would like to ask our general manager to comment on the same question that we're all discussing. Pete, if you have an opinion.
As a civil engineer, kind of like Don, I've been involved in these and seen a lot of treatment plants. Taking a tour of this treatment plant, reviewing the documentation from the professionals, engineers that have put this together. It looks like this plant needs to be replaced. Now, there was a decision made on whether or not this plant needs to go down the path of the technology that was chosen, MBR, versus replacing it with traditional technology. I don't really have a say in that, or I don't have a feeling for that. I'm more familiar with the traditional technologies. I don't have as much experience with MBRs, but I do know that it is a very good technology that is the way that many are going.
So do you see, what would be the harm in waiting 30 days to get this report from David Munn and not putting people in a 30-day bind here to get some additional information, which I'm hoping is going to be meaningful? I mean, you tell me, Ed, should we get some?
David's working towards identifying what that tipping point or break point would be. Whether it's 35 million, 40 million on weekend. And we should have basic information to make a trustee meeting.
So when is the new board seated?
Next month.
Yeah.
Next meeting.
What?
The next meeting.
So my personal opinion is, with the information I have today, I would say it would be, I would vote for those that want to go ahead and plan to replace the plant. That said, if we're going to get new information or additional information in 30 days that helps us justify this decision, I think that would be appropriate. I mean, it is a multi-year project, multi-million-dollar multi-year project. So I think a 30-day delay for me personally makes sense. So what I see,
So, and I'm not, it's obviously a political question. But
not to me,
what we're saying is that we're gonna wait for a 50,000, which happens to be about the third iteration of this evaluation. Give us a list, we got a list, give us some more stuff, give us the cost, and now we do this. And that's, we've already spent a lot of money just trying to prove that we're right. And I'm having trouble with a new board deciding all they're gonna hear is what they heard with the $50,000 study, and then they're gonna make a decision.
so if we get 2 new directors next month
Right.
and we've already approved the engineering money, they could still vote no on
Fine with
the
me.
new plan.
I don't have a problem with that. I mean, if they do, they do. At least they'll have another month's experience.
Back to your statement. Even if all the months were authorized, the supplemental agreement, it would still take several months before there's a offering statement ready to go for a bond sale. There's still several months, probably close to 4 or 5 months before we could have technical qualification in our hands, evaluating which firm to use on engineering design. So it's not like if you approve this week, next week, we've got somebody ready to start cranking numbers through a calculator and sizing bases. There is some time we need in-house to deal with some of the logistics of whatever gets offered.
Okay. I'll call a roll call vote. Is everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
This is for agenda item number 13, to consider an act on the supplemental agreement to approve $40 million for the SJRA to start engineering work on plant number 1 on sawdust. Everybody's eligible to vote. Nobody has to vote. So I vote aye.
Just to clarify, $40 million bond issuance. That's what we're talking about, right? So this is the vote for the River Authority to go issue a bond on our behalf without taking it to the voters. I mean, like if it's a school district bond, it would go to the voters.
This is a revenue bond, so it's by contract between the two parties.
When the new surface water treatment plant was built, that $500 million deal was done.
Revenue bond.
Did the voters vote on that?
They did not vote on the bond. They voted on whether to create the Lone Star District. And beyond that, there were no public vote.
Public did not vote on whether or not SGRA or the Woodlands Water Agency could issue bonds, or the MUDs could issue bonds.
Well, if it's property tax bonds, Texas law provides that you have to have voter authorization for certain amounts of property tax bonds. Revenue bonds are different.
So could it be done where in this case, so can property owners vote on revenue bonds or we just, so it's not possible?
They vote by electing their representatives, which
I mean, it is what it is. So that's what the law is.
Well, the overall project, as Brian mentioned in the beginning, the bonds would theoretically include 2 years cap I. And so that would delay it such that there would be no monies going to payments until theoretically a bigger decision was made on the overall project itself, which could be a rollback tax election, which would go to the vote.
Yeah, but whether, regardless of what happens down the road, we're committed to increasing our rates to cover this $40 million bond.
No. What rates?
Our water rates.
No.
So how do we pay back this?
It could be a rollback
Tax rate.
Could be a fee, the options that you were given last month. It could be one of those in the end.
Yeah, but we're making a commitment to spend money now.
You're making a commitment to authorize STRA to sell bonds on your behalf for the engineering of the treatment plant.
Right.
But
it will need to be paid for one way or another. You're right.
yeah, it will be.
We are making a commitment to spend money that'll have to be paid for, regardless of any future votes.
If the new plant doesn't get built right away, is it safe to say that 40 million is going to get repurposed toward fixing the old plant?
Only if that came to a vote by the board. That would come back for a revised supplemental agreement to change the purpose for the bond issue.
Any other questions?
Thanks for the clarification.
So it's either yay or nay, aye or nay, yes or no, however you want to answer. I am voting aye. Paul?
Voting aye.
Don?
Aye.
Stephanie?
Aye.
Brad?
No.
I appreciate the discussion. I appreciate everybody's input and we're moving forward. Item 13, consider an act on a supplemental agreement. Oh, wait, we just did that. Item 14, receive update regarding status of Bear Branch, Panther Branch, research forest drainage improvements.
We have received the cost estimate from our consultant, LJA Engineering. We received it Friday. We're reviewing it. It's it's higher than the monies that's allocated for the project. So we're going back through and looking at the cost estimate with a lot of scrutiny to find out what's causing the numbers to be so high. And we will be probably we will be taking the estimate back to the consultant to have him look at it closer and refine it before we bring it to you all for to any of the muds that are in the Bear Branch, Panther Branch project.
25% higher, 50% higher.
Factor of 3.
Wow.
Substantial.
Wow.
So that's why we're not putting it in front of you. Because we don't believe it.
Yeah. Wow. Factor 3. Okay, well,
So this is a single source bid?
No, it's just the engineer's estimate. Not even a bid. So he's supposedly pulled numbers from the industry, what dirt has cost to move it, what cost to clear a grub, cost to hydromulch, hydroax, the various parts of the project.
some of this was supposed to be covered with federal money, right?
No, this is the Water Development Board loan,
Okay.
where it totaled $10 million, low interest or zero interest loan and a $1 million grant. So when you take out some of the engineering expenses, there's roughly $7.5 million, $7.8 million to construct the project. And this came in triple.
Okay.
So we've got some work to do with consulting.
Or not. Or just let the. Let those drainage areas just stay natural like they are, maybe. Wow. Any other questions on that? Okay, item 15, attorney's report.
Couple items under the attorney's report, but before we do, I hate to go back to 13. A sensitive item, but I don't think we formally had a motion in a second. We just jumped straight to the roll call vote. So I think just to make sure we're, minding our P's and Q's here, we probably should go back and make sure the board takes a motion. Second before we get to the vote.
Okay. I'll make the motion that we vote to approve item 13. We have a motion and a second. We have 4 ayes and a no from the previous vote. Would anybody like to change their previous vote? Is that good?
Thank you. All right, back to item 15, attorney's report. 2 items there. Number 1, the SGRA lawsuit. You may have seen a copy of that. So SGRA got a very good opinion from the Texas Supreme Court in their ongoing litigation with City of Conroe and Magnolia. Believe it or not, after all this time, this is an opinion still on procedural matters. The merits have not yet been litigated. So governmental immunity was claimed and it went through district, appellate, and then to Texas Supreme Court. Texas Supreme Court ruled that cities did not have governmental immunity from the River Authority lawsuit. And so they have now remanded the case back to district court for a trial on the merits. And if this doesn't help the parties make their way to a settlement and they litigate it, then there would be appeals from that conceivably go on, a few more years.
Is there a blurb on that in here somewhere?
There's not, it's just a copy of the opinion. It just came out.
But they have one, right?
Just came out last week. I think
Light.
printed copies outside.
Yeah, there-
It's also up on the Google Drive.
Some light reading.
They're all in Latin.
Well, that case is going to be cited for years to come. There's a lot in there about governmental.
It's interesting for sure, yeah.
Yeah.
The immunity thing.
So that's one item. The other is, you may have seen in the news last week that the EPA has now adopted the final rules regarding PFAS, which are the forever chemicals. There's 6 of them. I'm not thinking that they will be regulating. There's a little bit of a runway on implementation that starts monitoring requirements starting 27, enforcement in 29. Some news reports have speculated that the cost for implementation of testing and treatment nationwide could be $1.5 billion a year or more.
So is 6 or 9 of them, but it's out of about 150 of them. There's a whole lot left.
There are, and there's already been some initial testing through UMCRs by Woodlands Water as well as by the River Authority. I don't know if it captures all the ones that are going to be regulated, but so far Woodlands Water and the River Authority have indicated there have not been any issues, but that doesn't count towards our official.
And the treatment for surface water would be carbon, right? Activated carbon.
For the most part, it is,
So we sort of went over that in the
Yeah.
design phase of the plant.
When you did the awesome.
And that was part of the reasoning to do activated carbon. So looks like that was a good decision.
Good
A lot of
idea.
good decisions that they don't have to worry about now, so.
Yeah.
Right.
That's all I have on the attorney's report. Happy to answer your question. Yeah.
No update on the ending or the trial results from the previous case with the third-party utility.
Oh, you're talking about the antitrust case. I've not heard any updates on that. No.
That or the Ninth Court of Appeals, we're still waiting on decision.
And that's
That's the breach. Ninth Court is the breach case. And then antitrust was the
Progress.
Quadvest. We don't know.
That's gone on a little longer than we thought. You were hoping a month, right? 4 weeks.
We had hoped to have had an answer by April, but it's at the judges.
Just want to make sure I hadn't missed something.
No, you would have heard.
All right, thank you, Brian.
Yep.
Item 16, consider and act upon updated drought contingency plan and water conservation policy, RNS 35, and authorize adoption of a resolution regarding review of same. Pete?
Yes, so you have a drought contingency plan and a water conservation plan that was back in 2019. Requirement, it is to be updated every 5 years, so we're at that point. We've been working with SDRA and consultant to make any updates that are necessary. There really weren't that many changes to the drought contingency plan. The triggers stay the same. And all the parameters stay the same. On the water conservation plan, 2019 AMI meters we didn't have. And so that's been updated, and then a fair amount of information on our public outreach for water conservation has been included in the water conservation plan. So that's due May 1. So we'll be finalizing that and getting it submitted as required. So we'll need a motion.
That's on pages 63 and 64.
Yeah, the resolution to approve.
Make a motion.
Appreciate it. Okay, Brad makes a motion that we approve the updated drought contingency plan and water conservation policy. Anybody like to second it?
Second.
We got a second from Mr. Nelson. All in favor? Oh, we got ayes. Okay. Oh, anybody not in favor? Okay, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Item 17, discuss the GRP surplus refund of the MUDs. Eric? that's it.
Yes. So 65.
Mhm.
You'll see a little box summary. Let me explain what that is. If I get to it. So our understanding, the GRP committee approved and made recommendation, which subsequently was approved by the SDRA Board of Directors to approve essentially $14 million. And this is the surplus from the drought and from the Quadvest monies that came through. 14 million would go to buy down debt. The resultant of that will be roughly, I think, a 3-cent reduction in the wholesale rate. And then an additional 12 million would be credited back to the GRP participants. Of that 12 million, the breakout of what would come back to the Woodlands is on page 65. And for MUD 7, we're talking $224,000 that would be credited. We have received the credit memos from SDRA, so we'll be processing those credits through your April financials. And so you should see the April financials, that credit.
So I haven't read anywhere the distribution of the money and whether or not this was something that benefits only those members in good standing of the GRP.
It's a common question. I'll let Ed answer that one.
Must be bad.
Back to the table on that.
Must be bad if Ed's talking.
every participant in the GRP received a credit, including those that were not current. Now, the reason for that is they're still on the books as owing money. They're still on the books for late penalties, interest, and fines. So until we get through all the litigation, it's considered that it's a past due amount.
That makes sense.
Innocent until
What do you-
proven guilty.
And maybe they can use it later.
Don, you,
Yeah, So, well, the people in not good standing, and I don't have to mention who they are, have been short paying for a number of years. So did the calculation account for that?
yeah, well, inflation that's in the report that Chris provides you, the monthly operating report. It shows that Conroe, and I guess we just
So the Woodlands got $1, Conroe got 80 cents,
now, Conroe got,
the same dollar.
Same dollar.
they got the same dollar.
Why? They've been short paying.
Because again, their arrears are still on the books and they're full standing. And that was the decision of our finance committee.
And theoretically, if they were to win the lawsuit, then they wouldn't owe it.
If we win, we get it up. So excuse me.
Patience,
Wins, we win,
patience.
Or you negotiate.
well, what might get negotiated would be the penalties and interest owed on top of the pumpage. Pumpage, we would demand at 100%.
I think it was noted previously in a previous meeting that number is around 25 million.
Yes.
So who decided what part went to debt service pay down, what part went to MUDs?
Finance committee, relations, honest.
SJRA.
Not gonna get a more detailed answer than that.
He can tell you who's on the board.
Like why?
What else paid on?
In my mind, it should have been the entire 12 million, but that's me. It was paid in by the GRP participants because Conroe short paid. So any credits coming back should have been the whole amount. And I don't, that's without looking at the finance committee report and figuring out.
And to go one step further, the percentage is based on what you all consumed during the 22-23 grant. And so if there was an entity out there that didn't report in 23,
But I guess my comment is that 3 million out of 12 million.
so you're roughly 26%. of The Woodlands. And that tracks pretty regularly with the water that we budget for Woodlands versus other entities.
So how does the credit work?
No checks were exchanged, but as you see in the listing, you get whatever that percentage is. And the chart shows you what percentage you are out of the, excuse me.
So as a credit, 220.
3.1 million.
So is that credited in the rate or, I'm still not certain how that
It
works.
goes back to the general fund is what I heard earlier in one of the earlier meetings. And then your MUD and WWA talk through what happens with them, where that money goes.
But it'll be unrestricted reserves of the MUD initially. That can be.
Ultimately, it'll end up in our account,
Yeah.
our bank account.
We can use it to do unplanned expenses, or we can put it into our reserve, increase the reserve. $223,000 is not a game changer.
That's not a huge amount.
So.
We'll take it.
Zeros.
Thank you, Ed.
Item 18, There's no vote on 17. Item 18 is general manager's report. And
Yes.
act on if necessary.
Couple things. Just wanted to point out a couple things in the report. I did include some customer thank yous that we did from time to time. Also point out the township made a proclamation of March 27th, which is Cunningham Day, in honor of his passing. So that was nice to see. I wanted to point out some building improvements that we've been working on. The roof has been completely redone. It is 40 years in the making, so that's good. We did suffer some water intrusion in last week's storm through the balcony, unrelated to the roof, but we'll have to deal with the solutions on that. So we're working through that. Wanted to point out about on the map over on the wall over here, kind of a direction we're going to be going to kind of spruce up some things. That new map there is actually dry erasable and ends up being a little cheaper than recreating a map in this manner. So new, old version, version, we'll probably see a little bit more of something like that throughout the office as we make some improvements to the building. But it turned out real nice and the price just can't beat it. It's very affordable. So we'll probably look at doing a couple other versions using that same technology.
Did you compare that with just buying a big screen TV and projecting the,
That's cheaper.
it's cheaper, but it's limited functionality compared to a big screen TV.
Yeah, we're looking at doing that elsewhere for educational purposes for the public. That's what we're considering right now. But for this room, because we utilize that and can draw on it and move things around, that it was a little bit more beneficial for this particular room.
So you have something that people can access from the website and see the mud boundaries and things like
Oh,
that.
it's on,
That's already
it's on the,
on the website.
and you can zoom in and you can, that's why it's, that one you can't move it, can't zoom in, can't
Yeah, we're
find a street, you can't do a search on it.
Yeah, there'll be more to come around the building. Wanted to point out a reminder that this Thursday is AWD spring seminar. It's the speaker is Mike Turco, general manager of Grace Gavel Subsidence District. Myself, Shelley, and a few other board members across the MUDs are going to attend. Early bird has expired. Registration has passed, but you still can register if you'd like to. So let us know and I'll help you out there.
Can you bring us back a summary next week or next month? It looks really interesting. I just got conflict, so I can't go. So
Sure. One of the things that's been asked is possibly to see if AWD will provide the presentation,
okay.
which we believe they will. They have the last couple of years. So that's what we'll try to do is get that once it's available and then post it, and then we can bring copies for sure.
You guys go?
I'm going,
Oh,
yeah.
okay, so you can give us an update.
I'm always supporting Mike Turco.
And let's see, I guess the last item I had was kick it over to John for the communications report.
Hey, afternoon. I'll make this quick for you. Page 71, you've got your communication report. I just wanted to touch on a couple of things within that. So we've done a bit of messaging on the election, all the information that we put out, whether that's the bill stuffer, social media, website updates, any that comes directly from the Montgomery County Elections website or points directly to that website. And, yeah, so just very straightforward, when and where type of information made available for the public. You have an outreach calendar on page 73, so you can see where we've been in person, and Eric has a couple events coming up here in the near future as well. So continuing to get out there in person as well as communicating virtually. And then finally on Holloway infrastructure communications, the River Authority Board will vote hopefully to approve the next phases of that communications campaign, working with the Holloway consultant. That's gonna be the end of the month. And if that is approved, then we'll go forward with phase 3 and 4 starting in early May. So that's when the implementation will begin. So you'll start to see some some real production coming out of that. Thus far, we have a strategic plan and assessment in hand, but we'll actually start reaching out to the public here hopefully the next couple weeks. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, thank you. That takes us to item 17, or excuse me, item 19, receive the Woodlands Water Trustees Report. And so I would just have you reference page 75. There was considerable interest in SGRA operating reserve policy, R&R fund reserves, emergency reserves. How do we determine that? Why is it that way? Things like that. And so one of the things we talked about was we got into some of the details of the policies, and a couple suggestions were made. We also left it open for people that really wanted to dig into the weeds to comment and have their own input into the reserve or additional questions. And so that's kind of an open item. And then somebody had asked about, well, what if we had taken the 5 million or so in excess funds that we voted on last month and just given it back to the MUDs instead of using that for projects that needed to be done and paid for and topping off the reserve. The question was, you know, how would that have affected our rates? And I don't know, Chris, if you want to address this, but basically it was determined that our rate would have actually been higher. And I guess because some of these expenses, we would have incurred some additional expense to pay for some of the things that would have got put off. I mean, how do you guys want to explain that?
That's basically it.
Excuse me, none of those items were planned for the FY25 budget. And so if they were to go in the FY25 budget, the increases, what you see on there is what the rates would have gone up to include those items.
All right. And then we covered pretty much everything else. And, you know, I'm sure in the minutes that Reeves Nichols expense will be reflected to show 50 instead of 155. And again, I think it'd be good to have the 30 days on there. I think we were originally talking about 60 or 90 days for them to get back. Okay, that's all I've got for that. Any questions on the trustee meeting?
I don't know if they're replacing line yet on 242, but I'd stay off of that highway any time of the day. I made the mistake. It's got all kind of lanes closed between Lowe's and that's not good. They are digging up a lot of stuff.
Any reason for closed session? Takes care of 20 and 21. Anybody like to place matters on a future agenda? I'd like to thank Stephanie Zertuche for your service for the last few years.
Sorry, I couldn't continue, just have other duties now.
Is the baby walking yet? Almost.
Getting our-
Probably be close.
Clean up on things and
That's when the fun really starts.
putting work over there.
You have one for next time. I assume the Dave Mudd's findings will be brought back to this group.
The what? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
It's a $50,000 study.
For sure.
David.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. I don't know that that necessarily needs to be an agenda item, but for sure it'll be discussed.
Attorney report.
Anything else? Meeting is adjourned.